Lieutenant Sullivan, emergency. Come to the lab at once, please.
Human history.
What's he talking about?
It's something that happened when we first met.
I tell you, Brigadier, there's nothing to worry about. The Brontosaurus is large and placid.
This the patient, sir?
And stupid. If the square on the hypotenuse equals the sum of the square on the other two sides, why is a mouse when it spins? Never did know the answer to that one.
Excuse me, sir. The daily reports.
Take him to the sick bay. I'll make a proper examination there.
What's happening, sir? Who's...
That, Mr. Benton, is the doctor.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
I'm suddenly very gassy. Hello, I'm Scott. It's usually you who's gassy at the start.
I never have any gas. I'm like the leader of North Korea. I don't produce waste. But we are looking at a very special episode of Doctor Who, the very first episode that featured one Tomathan Baker. And we are looking at this first episode with Dear Tomathan because it is, 50 years?
Yeah, the
50 years of Tom
December,
Baker?
So nearly there. Nearly the 50th anniversary, which is fucking wild. It's a lot of time. And he's still with us at the time of recording.
At the time of recording. As we record this, Tom Baker is still alive. And he will continue to be still alive when this comes out, I hope. He is exceptionally old.
Yes, he just turned 90, so...
He's got another 10 years. I think he'll make it to a century.
Years, you know?
Yeah? You think he's 110?
120, I think.
120. Gee whiz. What an age. But yeah, this episode, Robot, first aired on December 28th, 1974. Truly a bizarre time for a new series of Doctor Who to begin. It feels so foreign from a modern Who perspective for Christmas to have just happened to be like, okay, and now the new season's on. Yeah,
I think it makes sense because both adults and children are off school, so we don't have to worry about anything in the Christmas limbo. So starting a new season for a family show makes perfect sense in between the Christmas limbo.
Yeah, it's just...
Nowadays, if they did it, they kind of tried it with Jodie Whittaker's second season. We had the first episode on New Year's Day, and then the next episode like 5 days later, which I think was a big mistake because I don't think people expected the season to start that soon.
Yeah, but that's also just because they didn't know how to market Jodie's era. They had no money for marketing, so nobody ever knew it was on or happening. Or anything, you know. But December 28th, 1974 was a Saturday. And it marked a significant year, a significant day of the year, whatever the fuck words are. In the United States, President Gerald Ford was in office, having just come into the presidency on August 9th of that year after Richard Nixon resigned following the Watergate scandal. I don't know much about Gerald Ford. I know very little actually about Nixon's. Most of what I know about Nixon, I know from like Futurama and Simpsons and like American media. You know.
All I know about Gerald Ford is he becomes Homer Simpson's neighbor across the road in Two Bad Neighbors. It's Bush at the start.
H.W. Bush.
It's Bush at the start, but
over.
then Bush gets tired of Homer, and then at the end.
Interesting.
Ford moves in.
Ford comes in. I don't remember that ending.
I mean, I guess he's still the neighbor. I don't know. We've never mentioned him since. He's dead now, I think. Is he?
Yes, absolutely. He's dead. I think so.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Harold Wilson was the Prime Minister in March. He came into power in March of 1974. So, this was a year where you saw a new Labour government take charge and a Republican president a new Republican president take charge following the resignation and shame of the other Republican president. It's interesting how things kind of mirror each other. Maybe.
Back then, Republicans made sense, in my opinion.
Did they? Did they?
More sense than now.
Everything is the same, but just worded. It's just got more flashy lights now. There's just more buzzwords and more excitement around it. But it's all trash. It's all endless trash. Speaking of endless trash, let's take a look at the cinema. 1974. I don't know how big you are in your 1970s cinema. This is a very big movie leading the way in the United States. The United Kingdom, also a big movie, one that I've kind of heard of. I'm not as familiar with it as I am the United States one, but it is technically possible for you to guess both. But we'll start with the United States. I do, again, have got 3 clues for you if you require clues, but I'll hand over
I definitely
the
do.
guessing.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, the first clue might give it away completely. It's a sequel to a very, very big, influential movie, and much like Nixon, one of the characters talks like this.
It's probably not a movie I've seen then. So somebody has a marble knife in it.
Yes. Well, someone had a marble mouth in the first one. I don't really remember if they're in the second one as much.
Is it The Godfather 2? That's my guess.
It is The Godfather
Okay.
2. Well done.
See, that was
Well
my
done.
first thought. I thought it was.
Yeah.
I only know The Godfather from like the early mid 70s.
Yeah.
So that was
yeah.
my guess, but.
Yeah. Godfather Part 2 is leading the box office
is a
with
movie
Al Pacino.
I've still not seen.
Interesting.
know.
I have. No, I've seen bits. I've seen the first one. I know I've seen the first Godfather. I've seen bits of the second one, and I haven't seen the third one at all. They're very long movies, which is always a turn off for me. I'm not in it for the long rides. Sometimes those are hard.
Yeah, when you're looking
know.
for a movie to watch at like 8 o'clock at night, a 3.5 hour movie is a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to be here till midnight. No, thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes, sure. Sometimes I'm in the mood for that, and that's okay, especially if I don't have anything going on the next day. And I'm in a particular fascination with that movie, but I just haven't been in that with The Godfather. It's also one of those films that I feel like through osmosis, I've kind of absorbed all the major beats, because it's been referenced and talked about in so much other media.
Oh yeah, and also when a movie is praised that much, you're kind of concerned to watch it just in case.
That's me
it
in Paddington
sucks.
2, man. That's me in Paddington 2.
I've
How
not
am I
seen the
ever
first
supposed to
one.
watch that? I've seen the first. The first one's fine. It's completely fine.
Yeah.
But how am I supposed to watch the second one? People are like, it's the best movie ever made. Fucking absolutely, it's not gonna be. How am I ever gonna be able to live up to watching that?
Who watches Paddington when? We need to watch
Who
it.
watches Paddington 2?
Because Peter Capaldi is the next door neighbor, Mr. Curry, isn't he?
He is. Yeah, he is.
Good
but,
times.
I haven't seen it. But in the UK, it is not The
boy.
Godfather Part 2 that is raking in all the box office money. It is instead a movie featuring Paul Newman and Steve McQueen. Doesn't really narrow it down, because if you look into Steve McQueen's filmography, he's in everything. He was in every movie ever made in the 1970s. He was a busy guy.
That doesn't narrow it down. No.
It won 3 Oscars. It's a disaster film.
Independence Day? No. I don't know.
Yeah, it is The Towering Inferno.
Okay, I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yes, I am in the exact same boat. I have heard of it. I haven't seen it. The poster for this movie is shockingly eerie of 9/11. It's just a giant tower on fire. You know, what did they know? But it follows. Architect Doug Roberts returns to San Francisco for the dedication of the Glass Tower, a mixed-use skyscraper that he designed for developer James Duncan. The tower is 515 meters tall and 138 stories. It is the world's tallest building. And during testing, an electrical short circuit starts a fire on the 81st floor after another short occurs in the main utility room. While examining the latter short, Roberts sees the wiring is inadequate and suspects that Roger Simmons, the electrical subcontractor, well, this is thrilling, and Duncan's son-in-law cut corners. So I imagine it's you
like
know,
it's like 9/11 meets Grenfell Towers, whatever. It's Grenfell.
Grenfell Tower, yeah, Grenfell, yeah.
How can a building burn if the beams were metal? Or
Steel beams, exactly. Yeah, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. I agree. There was some other little notable events that happened on this day. There was a big earthquake in Pakistan, which was very, very sad and resulted in over 5,000 fatalities.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. In the music charts, however, "Lonely This Christmas" by Mud was the #1 song in the UK, which I am not super familiar with it, but the place that I got all this information from said it captured the festive yet melancholic spirit of the season.
I think I know of this song, but I think Elvis sang it as well. I'm not sure.
Maybe, who knows?
I'm not gonna say it in case we get copyright
Yeah.
strike.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, you sing it perfectly. You'd sound just like him. But you know, festive yet melancholic is the perfect way to describe Christmas in the UK. I couldn't think of any other way of possibly capturing the feel of Christmas time.
I know it was Mud originally, but I do know this song.
Yeah.
Selling over 750,000 copies.
Wow. Banger. And also in the UK, and this might be of some relevance to you, Scott, the first episode of Robot, introducing Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, aired on TV, marking a new era for the beloved series.
Yes. Also on this day in history, Mr. Tom Baker went to visit a children's hospital, and you can see we got a picture up on screen now of Tom Baker with a little girl on his knee with Robot in the background. It's really sweet. Like the guy just really welcomed being like a children's hero immediately. Like he looks so happy to just be there with the children. Like what a good guy.
This was, obviously before he became very burnt out with the role in like 25 years or whatever, because this man was the Doctor forever. He just absorbed this role and it became his every being.
Yeah, I mean, he was tired of it about 4 or 5 years in. Those last few seasons, he just wants out of there. I don't blame him, but at the same time,
Yeah, there's a reason why nobody's ever managed to stay on as long as he did. It's taxing.
But yeah, we're talking about Mr. Tom Baker here, but the Fourth Doctor could have been played by another person. And I've got a full list here of people we don't really know. So one of the potential Fourth Doctors is Mr. Richard Hearn, who was 66 at the time. He was a comedian most famous for his slapstick character, Mr. Pastry. I've sent you a picture of Mr. Pastry on Discord.
I wondered what that was about. Yeah.
Mr. Pastry is an old man with a walrus mustache and a black suit and a bowler hat. And apparently, Richard misunderstood what he was auditioning for. He thought he thought they wanted him to play the Fourth Doctor as Mr. Pastry. So a little bit of confusion there. Barry Letts decided not to offer him the role because why would you be Mr. Pastry? I saw a sketch on the Ed Sullivan Show with Mr. Pastry, and I don't fucking understand what the joke is. He's doing a dance, and that's a joke.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. That reminds me, I was watching The Simpsons, and it was like, you know, you wouldn't understand the subtleties of British humor, and then it turned into like this really long. What's the skit when they run around with the music
Benny
playing.
Hill, yeah.
Yeah, and then it turned into Benny Hill. It was very funny.
Another person who was up for the Fourth Doctor role was Michael Bentine, who was 52 at the time, and he was most famous for The Goon Show, which I think is very famous now because you hear about people gooning online all the time. You hear nothing but people gooning out. You know, I guess people on Twitch stream The Goon Show because people often go on Twitch and just goon, you know?
Yeah.
That's something. Everybody's gooning nowadays.
That's against terms of service. But you can go to other places and goon all you like. Looking at, I looked at a photo of Michael Bentine here. He has a stark master-like goatee in a lot of these photos.
But yeah, he was most famous for The Goon Show, which ran from 1951 to 1960, and it was on BBC Radio. It was a BBC Radio sketch show, which sounds difficult to do. I think of sketch being a more visual kind of medium thing. I'm not sure how it would work in audio
Just
form.
Conversational,
I guess.
Just like and it would just be like.
Who's on first?
You
I
talk.
guess.
You just talk with like, you know, there's somebody there and you're like, oh, you're silly. The reason why I'm not hired to do this job.
But yeah, this sketch show would eventually go on to inspire Monty Python. But Benton left after 1 year because he caused creative tension. So this is a recurring thing with this guy, apparently. The other members, by the way, is Spike Milligan, Harry Seacombe, who was most notable for being in the Oliver movie, and Peter Sellers. You know who Peter Sellers is. Doctor Strangelove and the Pink Panther. Like, he became a big star, so interesting. Barry Letts met Michael Benton go when he asked if he could have input on the Doctor Who script. So he wanted to have some input on the scripts in Doctor Who. So it's a big no-no. Like, you could change a word here and there, but to change entire scripts, no.
Yeah.
Another person is Graham Crowden, who was 52 at the time. He was later famous for A Very Peculiar Practice and Waiting for God, two popular BBC shows in the 80s and 90s.
I thought when you said he was known for A Very Peculiar Practice, I was like, oh, really? What did he do? What was...
But he didn't want to take on a leading role at the time. He preferred stage work, but he would show up in Doctor Who with Tom Baker in The Horns of Nimon as Soldeed. So he turned up in Doctor Who. He's got a big goatee, and he's got an interesting look in that episode. I'll show you what he looks like in that episode. Hold on.
Yeah. Wow, he looks like the Master.
Yes, everybody looks like the Master.
Everybody looks like the Master, yeah. Like this guy particularly.
Another one is Ron Moody, who was 50 at the time. You're noticing a theme. All of these people are older than Tom Baker was. But he was also considered for the third Doctor at the time, which is... So I guess you just never got either of them, which is quite sad. Considered for two Doctors, but never got a single one. So sad.
Sometimes just doesn't work out.
But he's best known as playing Fagin in Oliver. Another actor is Jim Dale, who was 39 at the time. 1 year younger than Tom Baker. This is like the youngest actor considered. But he was best known for the Carry On films and he was contracted on other work, so he couldn't do it. This is an actor we actually know here. Yes, go on.
I just looked up Jim Dale, and comparatively speaking, and maybe it's just because, like, you know, he wasn't 50 years old in the 70s, so he didn't already look like a dying corpse. But this guy was relatively handsome speaking.
Yes.
Looking, which would be an interesting change of pace for the Doctor.
He's got a good
considering the
chin.
first 3 Doctor. He does. He has a very big chin. It's a very like, aha, I'm in cinema in the 50s chin.
Also, he's still with us apparently, so good on him.
He
89
is.
years old.
Yeah. Damn.
But the final actor who was considered for the role of the Fourth Doctor was Mr. Bernard Cribbins. He was 46 at the time, and obviously he was in the Dalek movies, and of course he became Wilf in 2007? 7, yeah. But he was rejected at the time because when he went to his audition, Bernard, for some reason, decided to showcase his fighting skills. And they were like, yeah, that's not the tone of the Doctor we want this time around. Goodbye. Because obviously John Pertwee at the time was very into his Aikido.
He was a man of action. Yes.
And Tom Baker, by comparison, was a very... he was passive, I would say. But of course.
Which I prefer... Like, I like how silly John Pertwee's man of action Doctor is, who goes in and karate chops everything, but that's not really the vibe I like from my Doctor,
That's exactly why I like him. Just I like
just because he's so different.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course we have Tom Baker in the role, who was 40 at the time, which was quite young for the role of a Doctor compared to William Hartnell or Patrick Troughton or John Pertwee, especially William Hartnell.
Well, William Hartnell was like 36. He just looked 80.
But he fell in love with the idea of acting as a kid, but his religious parents refused to let him study. He was, of course, a monk for 6 years, but realized he didn't have a dedication for it. I can't imagine Tom Baker as a monk. It's a very weird thing to imagine.
Yeah.
And then after he was a monk, he decided he would train to act while also doing a variety of jobs. He worked on building sites, pubs. He was a carpenter and even in the Navy for a little bit, and even in the army. Like he lived a varied life.
Guy floated around, yeah.
But he wound up in roles like Rasputin in a movie called Nicholas and Alexandra, and he played a magician in The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which I think he has an accent and brown face in that movie, so...
Awesome.
The 70s.
It was the style
wild
at the time. It was the style.
So, in early 1974, after a few months without acting work, Tom wrote a letter to the head of BBC Serials at the time, Bill Slater, asking for work. Bill Slater was a director previously and directed Tom Baker in a TV play, so they're like on good terms. Bill got the letter on the day that he was meeting with Barry Letts to discuss potential actors for the Fourth Doctor, and Bill recommended that Barry Letts should hire Tom Baker, and recommended he go see Sinbad, which was still playing in cinemas at the time. So they took a taxi trip to go see... Barry Letts took Terrance Dicks to the movie in a taxi, and they both immediately wanted Tom Baker. And 24 hours later, Tom Baker signed the contract on the spot. Insane to think about. Tom Baker wrote the letter on February 3rd, 1974, begging for work, right? He got the job 5 days later on February 7th. Insane.
Man, imagine you could just ask, can I be the lead of a TV show, please? And just get it. Just straight away.
We've been talking a lot about just people writing letters and then getting the job. We talked about the composer on Survival who was like, your music on this show is shit. Let me write the music. I mean, he wrote the music. Insane.
Yeah.
Different time. But he got announced to the press like 1 week later, and his life changed overnight. He was like the most popular guy in Britain. Insane.
Yeah.
So the writer for this episode was Terrance Dicks, who was he was the guy who wrote the War Games we discussed earlier this year. Terrance Dicks was the script editor for the 5 years during the John Pertwee run. And Terrence Dicks was eager to write for the show again because it was forbidden for script editors to commission his own script. So his last script was The War Games, and he couldn't write any more during the John Pertwee years. So he was very eager to write a new Doctor Who script. So he convinced Robert Holmes, the new script editor, to hire him by inventing a tradition that new script editors have to take a script from their predecessor. So he just conned himself into a writing job.
Iconic. That's some big brain thinking right there.
So Holmes asked him to just write the opening story with a single brief, but it needed to be about a robot. So for this, Terrence Dicks was inspired by King Kong and I, Robot, which, of course, he could see into the future.
The Will Smith movie.
Yeah, he could see the Will Smith movie. I'll say it was a book.
Yeah, and nothing like the movie. Although, fun movie. I do kind of dig that film.
I just watched it again recently. It does not hold up.
I watched it like I think maybe a year or two ago. I still have a pretty fun time with it. It's like 3.5 stars. It's not like amazing, but I like the vibes. Also, the single greatest looking pumpkin pie ever committed to film. I want to fucking eat the shit out of that pie, and I just can't because it's from like 20 years ago. And Will Smith ate it.
You could try.
But that pie looks goddamn delicious, man.
So Terrence Dicks was able to meet Tom Baker before writing the script and based the Doctor's personality on him. Obviously, the Fourth Doctor is basically just 85% Tom Baker, except the Fourth Doctor can do Time Lord things, you know. He wrote the Fourth Doctor as being scatterbrained, considering it was post-regeneration trauma, and he thought, hey, maybe the writers can settle on the Fourth Doctor's personality after I leave the script, you know. I'm going to write him scatterbrained and just weird, and they could do whatever they want with the Fourth Doctor, but obviously, I would say we're very close to the Fourth Doctor's personality in here. There's a few key things here and there that's a little bit off for the Fourth Doctor, but it's pretty solid in terms of, this is his personality. Yeah,
it feels like Tom Baker's Doctor watching it. It doesn't feel like if you go and you watch, as a recent example, the 60th anniversary at the Bi-Regeneration when Ncuti Gatwa comes in as the Doctor.
Yeah,
that version of the Doctor feels very different from the version that we end up seeing in Series 1 when he comes back to do his full series. You know, that they feel almost like two different performances.
Yeah, you're correct about that. Also, Terrence Dicks was very happy to finally write for Sarah Jane Smith himself, because this was the character he created, and he obviously created her with the idea of she has a career. She actually has a career of her own that's separate from the Doctor, and separate from Unit, you know? And that's like the most personality that's ever been given to a companion at this point in the show. The idea that she's a journalist. And they really lean into the fact that she's a journalist in this episode. Like, she carries most of the plot herself, which is very weird.
Yeah.
This is probably like the strongest showing for Sarah Jane Smith in the classic series, I must say. It feels like almost a backdoor pilot to a spin-off at some points, I would say.
Yeah, some sort of adventures that she might go on.
Or maybe she has some company. I don't know. And Terrence Dicks considered Robot to be his favourite script, which we'll be the judge of that.
Yeah. We'll see. It's okay.
So obviously the Tom Baker run saw a complete overchange in producer and script editor, but Barry Letts for this episode is still the producer. He stayed on to show Philip Hinchcliffe, the new producer, how to run the job, because he only had script editor jobs before this. So he just thought, hey, I'll stay on, I'll show you the ropes, and then I'll get out of here. Which is fair enough, you know.
Nice.
It sounds stressful. Like, apparently nobody else really wanted the job, because Doctor Who is a very stressful job. You're having to deal with big ideas on a small budget, which sounds very fucking painful.
Yeah, I'm sure creatively rewarding though. You know.
So when we're shooting the exterior scenes of this episode, these scenes actually overlap with the final recording days of Planet of the Spiders, which was John Pertwee's final episode. So Tom Baker is running around as the Doctor, while John Pertwee is preparing his final days as the Doctor. So that's like apart from just recently in The Giggle, that's like the only time
Yeah.
two Doctors overlap like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
And all of the exteriors in this episode are actually filmed at Wood Norton, which was BBC's engineering and training centre. So we didn't have to pay a single penny to shoot at these locations, which makes a lot of
Now
sense.
that's budgeting. Yeah.
Another thing is the exterior scenes in this episode were actually shot on videotape instead of film. Most classic Doctor Who up until this point would usually shoot on film in exterior scenes, but we decided to do video instead. This was because recording on tape would usually be difficult outside, because at the time, big, heavy, bulky cameras, it's really impossible to take these cameras out and move them around, But just a few years before this, the BBC kind of invented a new technology called outside broadcasting, and they would use this for like sports and news programming, and that's what they use in the production of Robot. And that's why Robot kind of looks shitty compared to a lot of classic Doctor Who, because it looks a lot better on film.
Yeah. I hadn't super noticed that it looked terrible. I chalked up a lot of it down to being, this is 1974.
Yeah.
But to be fair, have I seen any other episodes from Series 12? I don't think
you
so.
saw Genesis of the Daleks, which was
Genesis,
all interiors.
yes.
So, mostly
Yes,
interiors.
Yeah.
But
God, that's 6 parts. How did we ever get through that story? That's so many.
But something like the Demons, those outside scenes were shot on film, and so on the Blu-ray it looks fantastic because you're using the original film print, whereas it is so much harder to get videotape footage looking good on Blu-ray. Like, it is impossible, which is a shame, because you go back to the original Star Trek show. Those episodes look fucking amazing, like they were filmed yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you go back to Doctor Who, and it's like, the colors are kind of bleeding in together. There's reflections. It's all shit because it's filmed on videotape.
It feels real cheap to watch. Yeah, it's like home movie quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason they decided to film on video outside was because they had a huge problem making Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which was 2 seasons prior. They filmed the outside scenes on film, but they made the dinosaur effects on video. So you're dealing with super crisp backgrounds and just blurry dinosaurs walking around, which makes the effects look even shitter, 2 different mediums for like one scene. It's like Tommy Wiseau's The Room almost.
Yeah.
So
I need to actually sit and watch that. I've never seen The Room. I've seen clips.
It is incredible. You need to go see it in the cinema film.
Yeah, I saw Disaster Artist, which I enjoyed a lot.
Disaster Artist is okay, but the James Franco of it all kind of ruins it now.
I can deal watching with James Franco and separate the man from the artist in that sense. Mostly just because he's in a lot of movies I like, and so I'd be kind of fucked if I couldn't. Yeah.
But yeah, that is a Robot. Are you ready to start episode 1?
Yeah, sure. Let us dive in. We're covering the first 2 parts, I don't know if I said, of Robot this week. We'll cover parts 3 and 4 next week. But we are going to jump into part 1 right now.
A new body is like a new house. Takes a little bit of time to settle in. As for the physiognomy, well, nothing's perfect. Have to take the rough with the smooth. Mind you, I think the nose is a definite improvement. As for the ears, well, I'm not too sure. Tell me, quite frankly, what do you say to the ears?
Well, I really don't know.
Well, of course you don't. Why should you? You're a busy man. You don't want to stand here burbling about my ears, neither here nor there. I can't waste any more time. Things to do, places to go. I'm a busy man too, you know. Thank you for the most interesting conversation. Must be on my
There's
way.
absolutely no question of you leaving, Doctor. Now you go back to the infirmary, I mean the sick bay, get into bed and stay there until I say that you can get up.
How can I prove my point?
I feel I ought to warn you, Doctor, that there's grave danger of myocardial infarction, not to speak of pulmonary embolism. Yes, I should.
Mother, Mother, I feel sick. Send for the doctor. Quick, quick, quick. Mother, dear, shall I die? Yes, my darling, by and by. 1, 2, 3.
So, our episode begins with the end of Jon Pertwee.
Yes, the end of Planet of the Spiders.
Yes, which is kind of nice. I kind of like that, you know, series 12, like series 11 and 12 roll right into one another, you know, like there's like immediate crossover. These events they just keep going. Doctor Who doesn't stop. It never fucking stops. And Jon Pertwee is dead.
Yes,
And
he actually
replaced,
is, yes.
yeah, he is, and replaced with Tom Baker, who is alive, and
Yes.
still is.
So the day before this, people would have gotten the chance to see a 105-minute omnibus edit of Planet of the Spiders. So Jon Pertwee's regeneration story is fresh on everybody's mind. This omnibus version got 8.6 million viewers, which is insane to think about. And it probably would have only been like the 30th program of the week as well. Nowadays, you know, Doctor Who can get like 5 million and be like number 4.
Be like
it's so bizarre.
Yeah. But it's just different media. They didn't have all that pornography that we have now. So it's much easier, you know, it's so much distractions. But he regenerates into Tom Baker, and everybody around Unit HQ is pretty on board with what's happening. They're like, oh, he's changing his face again. We understand what's going on. They call the doctor, not the doctor, but a doctor in.
This is our introduction to Harry Sullivan, who we've seen previously in Genesis of the Daleks.
Yes.
So his name is dropped in Planet of the Spiders. His original name was going to be Harry Sweetman, but they changed it at the last minute. I like Sullivan. Sullivan is a decent name. He was introduced into this season to be the action man in case we went with one of the older actors we discussed earlier. So if Mr. Pastry was the Doctor, Harry Sullivan would have had more action scenes, but Tom Baker could handle the action scenes, so Harry Sullivan is kind of like an afterthought in most of his adventures. Like in this episode, he does hardly anything really. He gets locked up in a cupboard, and then he goes to infiltrate the enemy HQ, and then he gets forgotten about for most of the story. It's a shame because Ian Marter is pretty great.
Yeah, I remember we both really liked him in Genesis, and you know we had a very similar conversation where we're like, it just kind of sucks that Tom Baker is able to do everything and they don't actually need Harry, you know, like, because he is an interesting character and well-performed actor. Just matter of happenstance, isn't it?
And of course, Ian Marter fell to the Doctor Who curse, died at 41 of a heart attack. So, yeah,
Christ, yeah,
just really
that
sad.
got everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know, everybody's super chill and calm about it because I presume it. Did Unit ever meet the second Doctor?
Yes, the Brigadier and Benton, who are both in the scene, met the second Doctor. Obviously, they worked with the third Doctor for most of his run.
Yeah.
And well, we didn't see the regeneration. This is the first time they've actually witnessed the regeneration. So this is brand new to them. I feel like they should be freaking out just a little bit more, especially Sarah Jane.
Wow, that was crazy. Yeah, Sarah Jane's very calm. Everyone's super calm about it. They're just like, oh, this thing happens. This is what the Doctor does.
It's like the doctor just fainted or something. Like, yeah, we'll just send him to sick bay and make sure he's okay, and he'll be good to go.
Yeah, which is weird. I'm like regeneration in Classic Who is always a weird one because they never had the budget for it, but they also never quite figured out how to do it best or like the best way of presenting it, and which I think modern Who has, as much as it's very boring every now and then, just to watch, another big explosion is coming, the TARDIS is destroyed again, there's big fireworks and whatever, but it's climactic, it's the end of a life, it's the start of a new life, it's death and renewal and everything that regeneration brings into it, which a lot of the time in Classic Who it's a fade slider.
They just kind of change when everything goes on as normal, basically, apart from the regeneration into the Sixth Doctor, where he becomes very paranoid and tries to kill Perry. We need to cover
which was we've covered that regeneration, haven't we? Not the first episode, but we've covered
Caves of Androsani, which is the regeneration of the Fifth Doctor, but we haven't covered the Twin Dilemma, which I was about to call the Twin Towers for some reason.
It's because we were talking about the Inferno, the burning Inferno, whatever. But yeah, which we've said before that the Sixth Doctor, like very much would have fit more in the modern era than he would in his own era, because he was that edgier, harder to like Doctor that was very experimental for the time and could have been great had he been given a goddamn chance.
It's a shame. Well, we still need to we need to figure out how to do Trial of the Time Lord someday. That's going to be interesting. The whole season, that's going to be an interesting one.
That's a lot. We cut away from this medical center to instantly introduce a threat into this story, which I don't think is needed. I don't think we need to introduce the robot threat this early on.
No.
When we could spend the first chunk of, even the first 12 minutes, the first half of this episode, which we mostly do with just Tom Baker and getting to know this new version of the Doctor and seeing him be wacky and weird and kooky and stuff. But instead we cut to first-person B vision. B as in the animal, because it's split into grid-like glass, and you just can't see shit of this robot walking down the street murdering folk.
Yeah, it's a Mosaic Miller and Christopher Barry, who was famous for Monster POVs. He was the first guy who directed the Daleks in 1963, which ended with a famous point of view shot of the Dalek going towards Barbara. So he really liked his point of views in his monsters. For a minute and a half, I don't think it's needed. This goes on for a minute and a half.
It's so long. Yeah, it's so long. Which is classic.
And we're just seeing this clamp go off all the time.
It's classic Tom Baker era. You remember fucking, is it Hand of Fear? Where they just walk around the goddamn nuclear power station.
Yeah, we get
half
to watch
an episode.
Sarah Jane. Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
You missed it in Planet of the Daleks. There's a whole episode where it's a car chase for like 12 minutes.
Awesome.
And it's just going back and forth.
At least that's exhilarating. Cars drive fast. It's not, you're not having a tour of a nuclear power station. Which sounds cool. I would like it if I was in person. If I was actually getting a tour of a nuclear power, that sounds fascinating. But watching someone have a tour silently through a nuclear power station, not as good as it sounds. But we continue. We get a little bit of a conversation between Sarah Jane and the Brigadier, where they basically just talk about how, things are a bit different now with the Doctor regenerating, but we'll have to make sure we look after him and blah, blah, blah. And it's just reestablishing who these characters are for us.
Yeah, they also have a brief conversation about what just happened with the robot. The robot steals top secret information, and the scene opens up with Brigadier telling that Sarah Jane that something was stolen, and stolen how? Blah, 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 blah. It's stuff we just saw, and they have to reiterate it.
Yeah,
no one
because
saw them,
they
it's
have to
probably
reiterate
enemy
it because nobody could make out what was going on screen, so they had to
agents.
tell you what just happened in case you were sitting at your TV. Because remember, this is 1974. A lot of people also have black and white TVs. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't still have color yet. Like they shot this in color, but that doesn't mean it was watched in color. I can just imagine watching this in like 480p or 240p, black and white, like the other side of the living room and a TV, like a 6-inch TV screen. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's basically like watching it on your phone, just really far away, I guess.
Yeah. It's like setting your phone up at as the centerpiece of your living room.
But yes, also in this scene, Sarah Jane's like, I really just want to go visit a think tank and just talk to them about, because we're at the frontiers of science or whatever, and they're secret Nazis, we find out later on.
Ooh, spoilers.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
But
they're an interesting bunch, the think tank. When they first got introduced and they were like, they want a further scientific thought. I went, oh, nice, these guys sound cool. And then we meet them and I went, oh, fuck.
But yeah, very an interesting bunch. But I do like this scene because I like the chemistry between Sarah Jane and the Brigadier here, where we start talking about the Brigadier being old fashioned, and
Yeah.
and what's the line again? Sarah Jane talks about him being a swinger.
Yeah, she's like, because he's like, Sarah Jane, I'm a bit old-fashioned myself, and she's like, no, come on, Brigadier, you're a swinger. I was like, okay.
Which I
This
presume
is the 70s.
Which I presume doesn't mean the sex sort of swinger.
Orgy. Canonically, the Brigadier is into orgies.
Okay, I'll buy it.
It was the style at the time. Everybody was doing
yes.
them. They were the hot new thing. And we then go to a scene with Tom Baker, which is, I think, my favorite scene in this entire 2 episodes that we are covering, where he is trying to break back into his TARDIS. He finds his key in his boot, but he gets interrupted by the Doctor. Not the Doctor, a doctor. He's the Doctor, the definitive article. It's an iconic scene.
Yes.
And he's basically just trying to prove to him that he's fit and healthy and that he doesn't need to go back to the med bay. And he does the most insane run on the spot I've ever seen a single person do in my life. His hands are straight out like daggers, his eyes
It's like
popping
Tom
out his
Cruise,
head
kind
the
of.
entire yeah. His eyes just keep popping out his head in the Tom Baker way that he manages so well. And it's just incredible to watch. It's so much fun. It's so goofy and silly. And sometimes it takes a minute for a Doctor to click, to feel like the Doctor. Tom Baker right off the bat, boom, this is the Doctor. You believe it immediately,
Yeah, this is absolutely obviously it's because the 4th Doctor is based entirely on him almost,
Yeah.
It's just him, so he's just playing himself, just his eccentric self, which God bless him. I love him. I love how he's still like this to this day as well. He hasn't changed a bit, really.
Yeah. There's a bit where he looks in the mirror and he's like, an improvement in some places. You gotta take the rough with the smooth with the rough. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like John Pertwee is a much more handsome man than Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Tom Baker's not necessarily ugly, but he's fascinating. He's a fascinating looking
Tom
man.
Tom Baker is a fascinating man, yeah, but the way he speaks is kind of sexy. He's
got a good voice.
Yeah,
he has
got
a good deep voice.
He's got a good wit about him, which is kind of sexy.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has interesting hair. But he's got a mental mouth. His mouth is so big, man.
But yeah, this scene is making fun of John Pertwee. Tom Baker comments on, the nose is a definite improvement, which John Pertwee was very sensitive about his nose, especially in close-ups. So this is just Terrence Dicks making fun of John Pertwee. Which, after working, if you work with a man for 5 years, work with an actor especially who's so self-conscious about his image, you're allowed to make fun of him,
Sure. One of the like taking on the role of the Doctor, I think you need to have a bit of self-deprecation. Like you need, because people are gonna point it out, so you need to be willing to be like, yeah, I know I have like Matt Smith, it's like a massive chin, and so he has a massive chin, or like Eccleston's big ears, you know, like you have to.
Eccleston's big ears is kind of an echo of this scene because, in his first episode, he also looks in the mirror. And in this episode, Tom Baker goes, "What do you think of my ears?" Several decades later, it'd be Christopher Eccleston looking in the mirror and going, "Oh, these ears are a bit big. What do you think of my ears?" It's the same thing, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, with Matt Smith, it was his chin, wasn't it?
Big chin, yeah. Well, like when he first regenerated, he sounds like a girl or whatever, because he's got like a high pitched voice. But then later on, they started talking about the size of his chin as the series progressed on. Capaldi's eyebrows, his very stark, angry eyebrows. Jodie,
the first thing we see of them as well.
Yeah, David Tennant as well. I don't remember them ever making fun of any. He's too handsome. Same with Jodie, too handsome.
Same with Gatwa, too handsome. Jesus Christ, that guy is so handsome. Holy shit.
Yeah, can't find any. Yeah, no, they. Goddamn, we need more weird looking doctors. The Doctor needs to be goofy. He needs to be a goofy dork. He needs to be a goofy dork guy, not a handsome adventurer.
But Tom Baker grabs a skipping rope and just immediately starts skipping with Harry Sullivan,
insane.
which looks fucking difficult to do. I wonder how many
incredibly
takes this
impressive. Yeah, incredible. Well, you just gotta get in the rhythm.
Yeah.
You can hear they do like a double jump, then a jump over the rope. So they have their timing nailed down. But managing to stay in that timing, say your lines of dialogue, and also keep your blocking, and also, like, you've got Tom Baker with his eyes popping out of his head, staring at you.
See, I can't even skip just by myself. Like, I'm just terrible for, I'm terrible for balancing and timing and shit like that. So it's difficult.
Are you like? Do you have dyspraxia?
I think
be
so.
like
I
Ryan.
really think I am kind of like Ryan as well. Was it Ryan? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very good at skipping it. I haven't skipped rope as an adult, so I could be dog shit at it now. But I remember being a kid in like primary schools, probably when you do the most skipping with ropes, honestly. And being very good at it. I could do the crisscross. I could do all sorts of shit with it. I could get fast.
Okay, go on, do it right now then. Let me see.
I don't have a skipping rope.
Excuses.
Yeah, I did recently skip. I was out on a meeting with some friends in the city recently, and between going from one location to another, we just skipped down Union Street for a bit. So that was fun. Yeah, we were linked in arms, skipping down the street. I don't really remember why we were doing it. They started doing it, and I just joined in.
How many drinks were taken that night?
I was quite sober. I can't speak for them, but I think I had like 3 drinks that whole night. I was very sober, just having a good time.
That's good.
It's good to be whimsical. The Sarah Jane and the Brigadier then come in to find the Doctor, not the Doctor, Doctor upside down. Yes, I know it's Harry. I just like saying it. Harry, upside down inside a cupboard.
One of the weird things about Harry Sullivan is he's like a Navy officer or doctor or something. Why is he in with UNIT? That never made sense to me. Why does he work with UNIT? UNIT doesn't make any fucking sense.
UNIT never makes sense. UNIT just do what UNIT are gonna do, and you just have to be okay with it. Are they military? Are they spies? Are they whatever? Are they are whatever they want to be. They're UNIT. Are they owned by a snake man? Are they not? Who knows?
Every week we talk about this snake man.
It's because it's fascinating, and not enough people talk about it. Not enough people talk about how UNIT was founded by a snake man.
The whole unit subplot of Flux was just the worst.
It made no sense at all. Yeah, it didn't. I
Oh,
don't remember even connecting to anything.
Yeah, so suddenly Kate Stewart is here and her house blew up or something. I don't know. I mean, she's told, "Oh, unit is off the grid" or something, and then it comes back like a year
And then
later.
units just back even bigger than they ever were before because they have a giant skyscraper in London now.
Pain.
Yeah.
Pain.
Yeah. But Sarah Jane and that try to get the Doctor out of the TARDIS by telling him he can't leave, and he disagrees with that, saying, "Oh, there's no such thing as can't." And then he comes back, he's like, "But why can't I leave?" And he starts to recognize the Brigadier and get his memories back a little bit, because, you know, one of the fun things whenever the Doctor regenerates is dealing with that post-regeneration you know, trauma, stress, or, you know, amnesia, whatever. We never got that because of the biogeneration.
Yep.
We never got that with Shooty. We totally missed out on that whole thing. You kind of get it with Jodie. She passes out for a bit in her episode, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's like asleep on the couch or whatever, and then
Yeah,
wakes up and
the
does some
bit of
tinkering.
Regeneration comes
Yeah.
out of her mouth, like in Christmas Invasion. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously you get it with Tennant and Smith and Capaldi, where they are all a bit kooky and weird after their regenerations and need to rest. But it's kind of a tradition with regeneration that I like. You know, it gives you time to get to know this new Doctor without it being too overwhelming, because the companions are also there being like, "God, I can't believe he's changed. He's so different now. I wonder why he's so weird." And then you get little glimpses where you can start to like this Doctor before you go off on the adventure next time, rather than just being like, "Nope, adventure time, baby."
Yeah, there's something about the Doctor himself also trying to figure out who the fuck he is now, because his entire DNA has fucking changed, which is must be really fucking difficult to navigate.
Which we also never got with the 14th Doctor. When Jodie regenerated into Tennant, Tennant was just like, "Oh, fuck, I'm back. Okay, cool."
Yep.
Which kind of the problem with the 14th Doctor is it's just the 10th Doctor again. They could have done something really interesting and didn't.
They really could have done anything more with it. I don't understand. Yeah, they could have done something about, you know, the idea of nostalgia and the power of nostalgia, like, the Doctor choosing his old face again and why that's dangerous to lean into nostalgia, but they didn't do anything with it.
Or even, like, you know, like he looks the same, like he looks like the 10th Doctor, he sounds like the 10th Doctor, but what if he's just an asshole? You know, what if his personality is just way fucking different than and so he goes and he meets all of his old 10th Doctor companions who are like, "Oh my God, Doctor, you're here," and he's like, "Fuck you," way more interesting.
The 14th Doctor is gay now. He liked Isaac
Oh
Newton,
yeah, they made it way different. And they really leaned into that with those. Fuck me.
But Sarah Jane is like, "The Brigadier really needs you, Doctor." And the Brigadier isn't paying attention. He's like, "What?" Like, "Yes, I do, yes." "We're dependent on you."
Yeah.
I just love how dry the Brigadier is and how little he gives a shit. He's just like, "Oh, another day in the office, okay."
Yeah, he's just going through the motions, honestly. And after that, we get a scene back with the robot, which is terrible, and a very sleepy, bad security guard. And he, like, hears something coming, and so he gets the world's flimsiest piece of wood you've ever seen and sticks it between the door, but it's not enough. It breaks the door. And then it's supposed to strangle him, this robot, which you don't see yet. It's just arms, clawing arms. But it doesn't quite work. And the actor has to lean into the hands and keep it steady, and it's very silly. It's very silly looking.
There is a lot of actors trying to guide the robot because the actor inside just cannot cope. He can't see, he can't balance himself. So there's a lot of guiding with the robot.
It is, and when we see the robot, I was not expecting it to be as fucking gargantuan as it has no reason to be as clunky and massive looking as it is, you know, it's crazy.
But this security guard is played by John Scott Martin, and he had many bit parts in the role. He's like one of your favorite actors in this show. You know why?
Why?
his first appearance was as Zarby in The Web Planet, your favorite episode, Matthew.
Yeah, it's yeah. If I was to only recommend someone watch one episode of Doctor Who, it would be The Web Planet.
Oh, I'm tempted to keep pushing that on. I keep getting tempted to put that on the list. I can't imagine us doing 3 weeks of it.
Like 10 minutes of that. It's fucking brutal.
I can't wait to watch it again with you, Matthew. Fantastic story. But yeah, this guy eventually became like a regular Dalek operator. He just shows up every few years, which must be pretty decent money,
Yeah,
Being a
I imagine.
semi-regular in this show.
I imagine it was pretty much like regular job money. Like TV was kind of just a job back then, wasn't it? But yeah, it's pretty cool. Our next scene is a lot more fun in the wacky sort of fun way, where we're getting a costume party with the Doctor, where he's trying on various different outfits. It starts with the reveal of him standing behind the Brigadier in full Viking outfit, and it's fucking hilarious. He looks psychotic.
I kind of wish we just picked like episode 1 Viking costume, episode 2 clown costume, just a different outfit until you reach episode 4 when he eventually settles in his long scarf and coat. I would have loved that.
That would have been very funny. I feel like it would have distracted from the plot.
But what plot?
Yeah. But yeah, he goes through in various outfits. Viking, you said Cloud,
King?
and there's a king, yeah, and a king as well, before settling on his regular outfit, which is funny. I get it, but I also, the reveal of his regular outfit feels so anticlimactic because of it.
Yeah,
where
like,
he's coming out in all these weird, like wacky clothes, and then he just comes out dressed normally, and it's like, oh, yeah, okay.
like the Brigadier is so sick of him. By the time he makes his final entrance in his iconic costume, the Brigadier is just like, oh, fucking just move, let's go. Like he doesn't give a shit, which is very weird to introduce this iconic costume. Like, this is probably like the most iconic television costumes in British history. And it's just introduced like this.
Yeah.
Brigadier doesn't give a single shit about it.
Yeah, it is like the outfit that people still think of when they think of the Doctor. They still think big long scarf. If you see like the Doctor get represented in American media, a lot of the time it's big long scarf. In The Simpsons and Lego Batman and whatever. Big long scarf is the one. That's the Doctor.
But yeah,
which is crazy.
This was chosen to contrast Pertwee's dandy costumes because he always wore the like big flannel,
frilly
shirts. Tom Baker was like, "Can I have a bohemian kind of style to me?" And of course, they eventually settled on the long... Well, they didn't settle on the long scarf. What happened was they gave knitting materials to an elderly lady named Begonia Pope. And she was very old, and she was very excited to work for the BBC. And they gave her lots of wool on the taxpayers' money, which is interesting, because obviously everything's on the taxpayers' money.
Classic BBC.
But they gave the elderly lady all this wool, and she's like, I'm going to knit using every fucking bit of wool. She got carried away with herself. And as a result, she accidentally made the longest scarf ever, which... was a very happy accident because it's so fitting for the Fourth Doctor. It's iconic.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Just a happy little accident.
It encapsulates like Tom Baker's version of the Doctor so well, where like he seems very normal, and then there's just this really extravagant, exaggerated part where you're like, oh wait, hang on, there's something not quite right about this. Which is very, very fun. But yeah, we'll continue to learn more about the Fourth Doctor as we get through this episode and the very dull plot begins to make itself more known. So, episode 1 continues onwards at a incredibly slow pace as they are investigating a breach into the area through the fence, And, you know, they're like, hey, this is something really, like, heavy or whatever's managed to push its way through here and climb over everything. And the Doctor's got this really uncomfortable looking
Yes.
magnifying glass, I guess is what it's doing, on his eye. But when I looked at him, I was like, holy shit, that looks insane. Because it looked like it's so embedded in his eye socket. It's kind of impressive.
Yeah, it does look
How-
painful. But yeah, the Doctor is looking at the crushed, what is it, sunflower, dandelion?
Yeah, it's the flower beds or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Next to the big burst open fence. But it's whatever, and they continue on their investigation. As I think the more interesting stuff is with Sarah Jane in the second half of this episode, as opposed, like, I think some of the funny stuff happens with Tom Baker, but the more plot heavy stuff is a bit more with Sarah Jane, as she's going off to visit.
Yeah, because
these,
all the Tom Baker plot is for figuring out, they want to build a disintegrator gun. As if that exists, as if that exists within this world. Why would you ever need to build a disintegrator gun? Why would that be?
in case you want to disintegrate stuff. Yeah, you know?
What use?
Some things need disintegrating, like trash.
I guess that's about it. Really.
You know, yeah, that would it would. You know how actual revolutionary a disintegrator gun would be. You would have to stop burning garbage. You could get rid of landfills. You could just disintegrate people. Rubbish.
Just send all the garbage out to space, like that one Futurama episode.
Yes. Yeah. And then it comes back. That's a problem, though. It comes back.
No, we don't have to deal with it for 1,000 years. Futurama tells us.
That's true. That's true. So it wouldn't be our problem, and it would just be solved.
Hey, wait a minute. Is Futurama political? Oh my god.
I don't think so. How can something set in the future be political? The Sarah Jane meets two people who are, like, she's like a scientific director or something. I forget what her like actual job title is, but Sarah Jane thinks it's the man, and she's like, "Oh ho 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 ho! I didn't expect you to be sexist, Sarah Jane. It is I."
Wait a minute, that sounds political. Oh my god, feminism.
I was honestly happily surprised to see this in 1974's Doctor Who. Very not something you expect is a female, lead, someone in charge of something, and not just there to scream all the time.
So the villain here is played by Patricia Maynard. Dix wrote a female villain because he was inspired by the women's liberation movement at the time, which was, I think it was the late 60s.
He saw the
early
women's
80s.
liberation. He saw the women's liberation. Went villains.
Well, that's your interpretation of it, I think.
I'm just piecing together what you said.
Miss Winters actually returned in Sarah Jane's spin-off series at Big Finish, because before Sarah Jane Adventures came out, Big Finish did a spin-off show which got cancelled because Sarah Jane Adventures got made. So it got cancelled on the cliffhanger. I think the cliffhanger was Sarah Jane is in space with no way back, which obviously isn't canon with anything else, but it's interesting. We also, as Miss Winters winds up being like a big terrorist. It's like she bombs the London Underground, and she keeps on trying to kill Sarah Jane Smith. So a much darker version of a character, I'd imagine. So far in this episode, she's just kind of like, I want to build a big robot and take over the world.
Yeah,
that seems
but
a bit
don't tell
more
anybody.
sci-fi.
Not going to tell anybody about my big robot yet.
Whereas, bombing the London Underground feels a bit more real.
Yeah, a bit more like it could happen. Yeah.
So the actor with her, this is her assistant, is played by Alec Linstead, who played Osgood in The Daemons, which was also directed by the same guy as this episode. Osgood is a guy who gets the suit on his face. We talked about him last week. Who is also the father of Osgood in the Lady Osgood, who turns into who gets cloned into a Zygon. Yes.
Yeah. I wonder what they're doing now. They're not.
She's not
as
being
in the
mentioned
character. I
anymore.
know. Yeah. I know she's married to that guy who's a host
Richard
of a game
Osmond,
show or whatever. Yeah. It's interesting. Oz is a very big part of her life. The start of the word Oz. Yeah.
But
Osgood, Osmond.
But we could have had Mr. Colin Baker in this episode, in this role here, which is fascinating. He was originally considered for the role because he happened to be Christopher Barry's brother's flatmate at the time, and he would later go on, obviously Colin Baker would later go on to be flatmates with Patrick Troughton's son. Either, I can't remember if it's Michael or David, I can't remember which one it is, but he had a lot of flatmates connected to Doctor Who, weirdly. I mean, of course, he became Doctor Who.
He did become Doctor Who. It's a small world, the world of the TV industry, especially back then.
Yes.
It's like 6 people in a house. And me. We see Tom Baker climb into the back of a car. I really like a lot of the stage direction and, the blocking that Tom Baker has as the Doctor. In this episode particularly, he's always doing something weird or is in a weird position somewhere. Like they have this car, so he just hops into the boot and starts lying down. Like it's a weird thing for him to be doing, but it fits his character.
Yeah, there is a lot of the Fourth Doctor just lounging around in this episode, which I guess makes sense because he needs lots of rest because he just regenerated.
Yeah. He's a sleepy guy. He's a sleepy boy. And it's, they're just still trying to figure out what this thing could be, where's this robot, what could have been broken into this thing, and they're like, okay, so let's set up, make sure that this thing's not going to be able to get in again. We're going to up all the security that we possibly can. Meanwhile, Sarah Jane gets a tour through the facility. Well, she doesn't really get a tour as much as she barges her way in.
Which I think the Doctor does the same thing in like episode 2 or 3 as well. He just barges his way through the door, which I fucking love.
Yeah, and I really like Sarah Jane in this episode, actually doing investigative journalism and having agency. And the episode does suffer right at the end when she yet again becomes like, I'm gonna die. Yeah. But up until that point, like, she's doing stuff, she's progressing the plot, she's actively, searching for things and being a hero in the story. It's awesome.
Yeah, she'll do what she can to figure out what's going on and how to stop the villains and all that until, there's a certain point where she's face to face with a fucking robot. What can she do in that situation? She needs the Doctor's help, but every companion needs the Doctor's help, but it is pretty strong for Sarah Jane to be like this, you rarely get Sarah Jane characterized like this because she can hardly do her job. She can like in Genesis of the Daleks, she's not going to go off and pretend to interview Davros or something.
It would be she could be like, hey Davros, I'm an explorer and I'm building an intergalactic podcast where I interview people throughout time and space, and you're evil. And I'm coming up with an excellent audio, like an actual good podcast show. I'm gonna stop talking. I got to work on that pitch a bit more.
Yeah, pitch it to Big Finish. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
they'd immediately buy like 200 seasons of it.
Probably. Apparently, they just have infinite money. So. But this scene with Sarah Jane and the robotics people, it's a bit of fun of them. Sarah Jane's asking probing questions and continuously pushing them, and they're like, "Oh no, haha, there's nothing going on here. Please just leave." And eventually they do get her to leave as we cut off to the Doctor with the Brigadier, as the Brigadier is explaining that the. What is it they're after, like codes or whatever the fuck?
Yeah, there's a secret safe. There's a safe with codes or something, and the robot is trying to get to it.
So like they're like, it's impenetrable because it's in a vault in a box underground, guarded by troops everywhere. And he's like, and all of the stuff is in that box. And it's like, that's like, you stumbled at rule 1. Separate everything. Have it in different locations around the globe. Yeah. And, it, or just never stop moving. It never stops. It's not in one location. It's always moving. It's perpetually on the like, how's anyone ever gonna steal that shit? You know,
Or
like,
you fucking figured out that, it's a big heavy person or robot or creature or something. Fucking take it into a helicopter and just have a helicopter fly around for like 1 million hours. Like the robot would never get the codes if you just
Send
had
it
in
into
a
space.
helicopter.
Send
it
them into space.
Destroying
Yeah.
the codes. Anything.
yeah, memorize them, destroy it.
Take a picture with it on your phone.
Yeah. But there's a fun little bit here where the Doctor compares it to the Titanic, something which Harry doesn't understand, which I didn't... Like, did Harry not pay attention in school? Like, surely when Harry was in school, the Titanic would have been relatively recent, like, within the past, 20 to 30 years. So he's like, oh, what do you mean it's like the Titanic? And there's a great bit where the Doctor's like, glub, 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 as he sits back down in his seat. Just wonderful little moments like that feel like the Doctor, you know?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think I get you.
Yeah, Harry just doesn't understand metaphors.
Yeah.
You know,
But Harry is written to be a dumb guy, a dumb himbo, I guess.
but he's a doctor. He's a smart guy.
I guess he just hasn't had the time to see James Cameron's Titanic yet. Okay? I don't know what to tell
But
you.
it's the highest grossing movie in the world at one point. How has he not seen
until he
it?
got beat by James Cameron, and then James Cameron
Yeah.
again.
Well, then he got beat briefly by the Avengers, and then he got
yeah.
beat by James Cameron again. But as they're talking about, the Doctor's going on to explain how the vault could still be drilled, come at from underground. They haven't thought about that one. And
Which
remarkably,
is really
as
bizarre.
remarkably, as he's talking about that, the exact thing happens, and they all run off to find the vault already stolen. As we have our first death on screen, as one of the guards gets killed.
But they didn't think of having somebody inside with the safe, just in case.
Yeah,
Really
no,
bizarre,
'cause it's,
but okay.
Yeah, it's
But
not a very good defense plan.
It is pretty funny. It is pretty classic Doctor Who to have this big, intricate plan to be immediately ruined by the most obvious thing that could happen.
Yeah, the one thing they didn't think about.
I fucking love how terrible Unit is throughout most of the show, especially in this episode where most of the soldiers can barely run for more than a few feet. Some of these soldiers are out of shape. It's very bizarre.
Something makes me think they're not actually soldiers. I'm not sure what that is.
But they're part of Unit, dude. They're part of Unit, right?
And Unit is not a very well organized organization. They just kind of like a mosh of everything. I reckon the way you get into Unit is you're in the army for a long enough period of time where they can't exactly just fire you, but you're also not good at your job enough that they can keep you on. And so they're just like, we're sending you off to the top secret organization that we've got for the best of the best. This is where all the good guys work. Well done. You're going in Unit. Yeah. Or you just top secret.
They are, they're meant to be the people who deal with fucking aliens and all that shit, and they are the least prepared people in the entire galaxy.
Bumbling buffoons. Yeah.
It's so bizarre. The Brigadier seems like he wants to quit every single day just working with these idiots.
I don't blame him. Sarah Jane meets with a living cartoon as she meets the scientist who invented the robot, who is, I think, every child's imagination of what a scientist looks like.
He kind of has the Albert Einstein hair and...
Yeah, he's a big beard. He's got these little round glasses that magnify his eyes, and he's very eccentric and weird, and it's a fun character to have. He made me laugh, but it is so out there for a characterization in this episode. He is truly eccentric, and I kind of love him.
And on the commentary, I think the director is like, I was worried that this guy was going over the top, and he is, but it somehow works. It kind of does work, but at the same time, it's like the least believable character in the story, because everybody else is playing it kind of sincerely. He's playing it as a cartoon character.
But look at him. Like, you cast this guy and dressed him up like this. How else do you play that character? Like, if he was to play that character dead straight and super serious, like, I guess that would be funny in its own way. Because it's like, why is this guy who's so serious look like this? What's going on?
So
but,
we need to remember this conversation when we finally cover The Invasion, a Patrick Troughton story, because he is also in it and he also plays a professor. So I'm wondering, I haven't seen The Invasion in like 15 years, but I don't remember him being in it, but I just wonder how his performance differs between the two stories. Is he more sincere? I don't know. We'll find out eventually.
That would
like
be
20 years.
Yeah, that would. Yeah. That would be quite interesting for sure. I don't really remember that much information that gets revealed in this scene. I think it's just he's like, nobody could build a robot but me. I'm the best robot builder
Pretty
in
much,
town.
And he
Sarah
ends,
Jane.
he ends the scene eating a big sandwich, which is a big thing in 70s Doctor Who, where everybody's eating sandwiches. Like, John Pertwee did all the fucking time. He had a sandwich while he was having a sword fight with the Master in the sea tunnels.
It was sandwiches had just recently been invented, so it was it was a pretty new food at the time. Everybody just had gruel before that, you know.
I just remember in the 1954 version of A Star Is Born, I think the husband cooks the wife dinner, and it's just a tray of sandwiches for dinner. It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck is up with the obsession of sandwiches?
Sandwiches are great, man. I love a sandwich. My go-to sandwich at the minute:
Turkey,
cheese,
ham.
No,
That's your
no,
sandwich?
No, you don't need no
Pepperoni?
meat
Yeah, you do.
in a sandwich.
Yeah.
You got cheese. You get gherkins. That's all you need. Bit of
That's
butter.
a good one. That's a good
You
one.
know,
Yeah.
cheese and gherkin sandwich. Oh my god, I would eat that all day. Toast it, cheese and gherkin toasty. Oh my god, yeah, it's been my obsession for months now. It's like I could endlessly eat that. Just so goddamn nice. The doctors examines a large footprint in the mud and they're still trying to figure out if there's a robot attacking them or something, as Sarah Jane leads us into the end of the episode by cunningly breaking into the robotic facility again, by like outsmarting a guard and then just hopping a wall.
Is it really cunning? All she did is like, I fucking left something inside. Can you let me in? I mean, the guard's like, I'll just ring someone. The minute he fucking turns his back, the worst guard in the universe. Like, Why is everybody shit at their jobs in Doctor Who?
It's the only way anything can happen is if people are incompetent. You know, if people were good at their jobs, nothing would happen. But nobody's ever good at their job, so things always happen.
But
And
I guess being shit at your job is like, they worked around that in the modern series by just having the Doctor use a sonic screwdriver all the time, so he doesn't have to deal with people like this.
Yeah, I suppose. And every now and then you'd get someone who's bad at their job, or they're too good at their job and it gets them killed. You know, like they just won't listen to reason because they're like, no, this is the way things have got to be. Oh my god, a robot! Ah, and then they die. But yeah, there's ways around it. I don't know. There's certain tropes you just have to like accept when it comes to writing Doctor Who, because you know there's only so many ideas, isn't there? But
Especially
she goes back in.
This is like episode 500 or something. There's a lot.
I know,
of
it's
Doctor Who
crazy.
before
This is series 12. Series 12. You know, we're in what, Capaldi's era equivalent, and for the modern Who, which is series 12's Capaldi, isn't it? Yeah.
No, season 12 is
No?
Jodie's second season.
Is it Jodie? Is it really?
Yes.
Wow. That's crazy. So we're on... Jodie was the 5th Doctor in the modern era. Or
Yes.
like 25th if you want to include all the spin-off Doctors they added.
I'm just trying to figure out what episode this is because it's annoying. This
Yeah.
is episode 382 of Doctor Who in its entirety.
Damn. That's
a
a
lot.
lot of episodes. That's a lot of episodes in just 12 seasons.
That's a lot of episodes in just a little over 11 years.
Yeah. Yeah. God damn. But Sarah Jane goes into the facility and she touches an oil patch and gives it a good old whiff. And she's like, I knew it was oil. I knew there was oil on the floor. Which, like, it said robotics on the fucking door.
Yeah.
Like, why would that be surprising that there's oil here? But okay. And then she gets attacked by the robot, which is also our first look at the robot. We get to see its head, not its entire body. And its head is all right. It's a bit penisy. A bit of a penisy head.
If that's what you think of, you know.
It's
You were
mostly just-
obsessing over Tom Baker's feet in just an off-air conversation. You know? And now you're thinking about penises. I think there's something you should tell me, Matthew.
I don't know what you could possibly be inferring. But it's an okay robot design. I don't dislike it. It kind of looks like a giant suit of armor as well. It's got like this glowing pink head, much like a penis, and this long cylinder metal shaft, much like a penis. And you know, constantly yells out to Sarah Jane, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Much like a penis. And
But yeah, wouldn't you believe it? The actor in this costume suffered from heat exhaustion quite often.
wow,
Which,
in a
which we
giant
were just-
metal-looking suit. Can't believe
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Which we were just talking about last week with the cheetah people in Survival. Like, classic
Yeah.
Doctor Who monsters just could not get a break. Like, holy shit, poor guys.
Yeah, you know, it's hard work, and probably you're paid the least on set because
Yeah.
nobody sees your face. So
And especially
It's-
since this guy is actually doing the voice of the robot as well, which sounds
Okay,
difficult.
yeah.
You know, it's like another Sutex situation where the guy inside is recording live with a microphone inside the costume, which is such a bizarre
God,
thing
that's
to
so
do.
much. Yeah, that's so much to do. Just do it afterwards, or do
Yeah.
it like with someone off screen. You know,
Yeah,
like
like
there's
we-
no
like they
reason
do
you need to
for
capture that
Daleks,
live.
like-
Yeah,
And
yeah.
every other way they could have done
You are,
it.
yeah, exactly. You already have the technology
Yeah.
to do it, and you do it all the time. Why?
Really bizarre.
It is bizarre, but our episode ends with Sarah Jane about to be murdered as we go into the cliffhanger, which is a classic Doctor Who cliffhanger. It always ends with someone about to die, and then the credits roll in. And it's an okay episode 1. I think that Tom Baker is the highlight. The rest of the story I don't care about so far, really.
I'm
at all.
enjoying it. I'm enjoying it so far, but we'll get to our final conclusions at the end of part 2. I like the story.
We shall.
It's fun. It's fun and goofy. It sounds
Why don't you marry it?
Schlocky.
Why don't you marry it? Why don't you marry it?
I wish I
As
could.
we go into part 2 of Robot right now.
Kindly put those papers down, sir.
Plans for a new solar battery.
That folder is private
This
and
will
confidential.
never do, you know.
There are many
If
years
theta over x coincides with your disputed factor, you're losing half your output.
Oh, rubbish. I checked on all those
Look.
calculations myself.
The error's in the third part of the calculation.
Bless my soul.
But you're doing vital work, Professor. Earth's human race should have started tapping solar power long ago.
Yes, you know, this new solar battery will provide an endless supply of pollution-free energy at a fraction of the present cost, and they haven't the wit to see it.
Well, there you are.
Yes, you know, I've explained it to them over and over and over again till I'm blue in the face.
People never can see what's under their noses above their heads.
No, they
Concerning
can't.
this
Do
robot.
be quiet, young man. You know, ever since the days of Galileo, science...
Copernicus.
Copernicus, scientists have had to put up with this.
Professor, I think you ought to tell us about the robots.
It was the last project I worked upon before I decided to leave. I gave orders for him to be dismantled. It was like putting my own son to death. I thought it was for the best. His power, His capacity to learn had begun to frighten me.
But it wasn't destroyed, was it?
I don't know. That woman Winters might have countermanded my orders.
Could the robot have been made to carry out these break-ins?
No. You say that people were hurt, even killed.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and it's out of the question. You said he refused to harm you, didn't he? Yes, well, I gave him my own brain pattern. He has my principles, my ideals.
But the circuitry you built could be altered or tampered with.
Doctor, not even I could effect such a change. As for Jellicoe and Miss Winters, well, they're incompetent nincompoops.
Maybe, but I wouldn't put it past them to try.
If they force him to go against his prime directive, they'll destroy his mind.
Episode 2 of Robot begins. And it begins where we left off in episode 1 with Sarah Jane about to be murdered by a robot. Alas, however, she is not murdered by a robot, and the bad guys come back in and are like, "It's just a prank, bro.
Yep, that's what.
It's just got you. It's just
That's
a
what I
prank."
wrote down exactly in my notes, which is Miss Winters going, "Yeah, this is just a prank, you know. It's just for shits and giggles." Is really bizarre behavior.
Yeah. They're just like, "Oh, we just wanted to scare you because we knew you had snuck back in and that you were looking for something, so we gave you something to look for, I guess." And we briefly cut away after that to Tom Baker, and we get to see they do the big, like, look at how long his scarf is shot, which is kind of fun. And Tom Baker's like, "Okay, so we're..."
Yeah, Tom Baker is sleeping on the table with his hat covering his face as well. It's some good physical stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, "We're looking for, someone with a massive budget that can create something massive, something anthropomorphic, something robotic, perhaps, And it's these next few scenes are kind of Sarah Jane doing the work and then cutting back to the doctor being like, I wonder who could be behind this."
Yeah, it is really cool how much Sarah Jane drives the story forward here. It's very unique for classic Doctor Who, rather than just her cowering in a corner being like, "Oh my god, Doctor, save me." She's proactive in the plot, which is awesome, not quite
good.
to the level of Ace in like survival, but it's still something that wouldn't have been done before this.
It's 1975 and it's Doctor Who. It's really good for what it is. And we end up going back in with Sarah Jane and the robot, where they give her a better look at it. And this is our first proper look at the full body of the robot. And it kind of reminds me of, do you remember the robot with the claws that you got as a kid at Christmas some years, when it was like remote controlled or whatever? Like, you'll know it if you see it. It was like white and muscly and weird.
I'm more familiar with the robot dog, which is interesting because that does also have a Doctor Who connection with K9.
I found, like, I searched up white toy robot white, and immediately I found the exact thing I was looking for. Hang on.
All right, send it over, dickhead.
Oh my god.
Come on. We don't have all day.
Sorry. We do have all day. I need to find... There it is. Sorry, I have like 4 hard drives, so it's hard to find stuff sometimes.
Nice. Okay, I think I
this
do.
guy.
I never got it because I was too poor.
I never got it. Yeah, I never got it either, but it was always in the shops. It was always on TV. Yeah. Like, it was like the hit toy. It was this white robot with claws, and it was really big and bulky. This thing reminds me of that. But like, when he comes out, it's really hard not to laugh because he's this huge bulky robot, and he's got just these 2 really dangly wrists. They're like there's like one little wire holding them, and he's just got like the world's limpest hands, and he looks ridiculous.
And I'm pretty sure the guy guiding them the guy behind him is trying to help him guide him into the room as well. So like, it's really obvious the amount of guiding the other actors have to do to help this actor in this poor suit. Like, Jesus, this poor guy.
Yeah, it's like it's an okay design. I like aspects of it. I think the head looks cool and it's got big cool shoulders, but it's like below the like neckline is when it really just kind of starts to fall apart.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was like Doctor Who's like biggest selling monster, other than like the Daleks or the Cybermen. But you could probably get.
Well, this
that
is
as a
such an
toy,
easy
and it was
toy.
pretty- Yeah,
Yeah.
Like Christmas. It's a shame. It's a shame this came out 28th of December, because by the time next Christmas rolls around, people would forget all about this. To be honest with you, but when with the Daleks, the Daleks started out a similar time, the 21st of December, and by Christmas next year it was. The
Yeah, but
biggest
there
thing
was
ever,
Dalek
but-
mania.
Yeah.
The Daleks were crazy. You know, there wasn't Robot Mania after this episode.
Well, what is his name again? Robot K1 or something? Mark
K1 something another.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we find out his name, and we find out that he's there to replace human jobs in things like mining and construction and various dangerous tasks.
That
And they shut him off after like 5 whole seconds.
That sounds like something that's, like a political commentary about how machines are taking over human jobs. But Doctor Who was never political, so I don't know where I'm getting that idea from.
I don't know either, honestly. But they cut him off, and then Sarah's like, okay, but what if, could you use this guy for dastardly means? Could you use this for murder and mayhem? And the boss lady's like, yeah, sure, why not? Kill Sarah Jane, right? Let's kill Sarah Jane. And for a minute, I thought they were going to cut away and that we were going to get the exact same cliffhanger we just had 5 minutes ago in the episode. I was like, no, we're not repeating this again. Come on. But they end up doing a slight twist on it where the robot is like, oh, I can't kill you because it goes against, it's like Asimov's laws of robotics or whatever, where it can't harm a human. We find out that is in place on this little robot dude.
And then again, Miss Winters is still like, yeah, I never really set him out to kill you, This is just another prank, bro. Yeah.
Got you twice.
Got you. But yeah, if this story was a 6-parter, I could imagine after the first 5 minutes of the story, Sarah Jane would leave the place. And then, 15 minutes later, she would come back, and that scene would happen. That scene of the robot coming to kill her would happen, and that would be the cliffhanger. Just, 15 minutes of nothing in between.
Yeah. And Sarah Jane ends up getting, really annoyed with the lady, and she's like, hey, what if you hurt that robot's feelings? And she's like, robots don't have feelings, it's a machine, you dum-dum. And she's like, hey, it can walk and it can talk, it might have feelings. And she goes over to the robot and she's like, I'm sorry if you're upset. And the robot's like, I am a robot. And then Sarah Jane ends up storming out of the place. But it's a nice bit of humanization for Sarah, and a bit of shows how much empathy she has as a character,
Yeah. And then 6 years later, she would get her own robot with K9, who she treats exactly like a pet. It's interesting how much has stayed the same over the next 6 years. And K9 and Company, wild time.
Great show.
Yeah. K9 and
show.
Company. You should listen to our review of K9 and Company. Where it's just
K9.
There's a cult.
pH soil.
pH
soil. Value of soil.
Oh, you learn so much about soil in that episode.
You do learn a lot about soil. It's very good. Sarah Jane ends up coming back to the next scene with the Doctor, which has a fun setup.
Well, yeah, but this is interesting, though. So, to end the scene, Miss Winters blackmails Sarah Jane by basically saying, hey, don't reveal our secrets, and we won't reveal that, you broke into our facility, basically. And then the next scene, she fucking reveals the secrets, which is such a strong character moment, She doesn't fall for a blackmail. It's really solid.
Yeah, and the way that she comes into the scene, I think, is great. When the Doctor's like, he's basically spelling out for the Brigadier what they're looking for. He's like, we're going to be looking for something that's really expensive, that's massive, that's most likely. Sarah Jane comes in, giant, massive fucking robot. Doesn't say those words exactly.
Yeah, she did.
the doctor's like, "Oh, how did you guess?" And she's like, "Oh, because I just saw the thing. I was just there. There's something going on at the bad guy place called Think Tank."
To go back slightly a bit more, there's also a big important piece where the assistant guy is acting concerned because he's like, yeah, we haven't sorted the robot out. The robot could have easily killed her, you know, which is, you know, it adds more to the layers to the plot, which, yeah, it's, you know, I like how the assistant shows concern because it's an interesting, it's not just a 2D character, it's a little bit of depth, you know, it's not the most amount of depth, but it's something, you know. It could have been just a very lazy 2D character.
Yeah. And we see him tinkering on the robot, and you know, when we go in with the villains, and bad evil lady is like, okay, look, we've got to make sure that the robot does some evil stuff for us. We're the bad guys, and we've got to make this robot do some evil things. And it's a fine scene. It goes like, I think this episode in particular, especially this first half, feels a lot of repetition, where it's, you know, oh, there's a robot here. There's a robot here, guys. There's a robot here.
Yeah, we did get a little bit of information that the robot was found wandering outside the professor's house because the professor built the robot, and maybe it misses Daddy, says Miss Winters, which is
which is an interesting line. Yeah.
So this ladder that the assistant is on caused a lot of trouble because there was a strike at the time. And Christopher Barry was the director, and he was told that he couldn't touch anything that the electricians should move. So he had to try and shoot around this ladder quite often. So in order to shoot around it, he would darken some sets and just try to choose really precise angles.
That's an absolute nightmare. You can't move a ladder. God damn.
Yeah, he wound up having to reshoot some scenes later on because it was just so impossible to shoot around it. It sounds like a nightmare. There was a lot of strikes at the BBC because Survival was also shot during a BBC strike. Like the amount of strikes at the BBC in the 70s and 80s is insane.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. But you know, people got to strike. Pay them better.
Nah. Lazy. If you strike, you're just lazy.
Yeah. Well, Scott said it. The next scene we get is back in Unit HQ, where they tell Harry he has to become a super spy and get off set and not be in this episode. Please go away, Harry, they say. He's hesitant to do it, but they're like, you're a big strapping, strong, cool, smart guy, aren't you? And he's like, oh, gosh, shucks, I am those things. You're right. That's exactly what I am. Meanwhile, it's
Harry
it's a short
Sullivan,
scene.
by the way, he disappears for 10 minutes of the story. I mean, next time you see him, all he does is say hello and he takes off his hat. I mean, he puts it back down on his head. That's all he does throughout the episode. Be told to go to this place, and then he takes off his hat.
like a super spy would, because he's so daring and cool. And our next scene is with the Doctor meeting the professor guy that designed the robot, and it's an interesting scene. Mostly because if I didn't have subtitles on, I would not know what the professor is saying at any given point. There's a fun back and forth exchange with him and the Doctor where they're talking really fast and saying a bunch of like gibberish science words where like the Doctor keeps one-upping the professor and correcting his mistakes and things like that. But the professor is like, he's like mumbling all of his things. He talks like this. He's mumbling all of his lies because I'm eccentric and I talk about it's an interesting performance. It feels like we were talking about this in episode 1. Like he is a cartoon character, which fits the look that he was being given, but it doesn't really fit the tone of this episode at all. He feels so out of place compared to everyone else's performances.
I'm kind of a defender of him. I kind of enjoy him in this episode because it is so over the top. It's it's camp. It's, you know, the Doctor Who has always been camp. It's a performance that fits the campness of Doctor Who. You know, it's enjoyable enough. I really like this scene because, you know, there's a pattern of the Fourth Doctor just nerding out about science. In the 3 stories we've covered this year, the Doctor nerds out about science in Cities of Death and Pyramids of Mars, and now this episode. So that's, it's an interesting constant theme about the Fourth Doctor, where he just meets a scientist and he just nudges them into the right direction and nerds out with them a little bit. It's a really endearing trait of the Fourth Doctor. And also, if you watch this scene, while they're trying to tell the Brigadier to shut up because they're busy geeking out about science, if you watch Liz Sladen, I'm like 95% certain she breaks character because
It's hard to tell. Yeah.
Yeah, because the seriousness that comes after their little geek out session, where the Doctor opens up, hey, what about the robot and the dangers of the robot? She goes dead serious, which makes me think the giggling is just something that she accidentally did on set. I don't know. It feels
maybe, but
natural.
I read her giggling as like she's laughing at how smart the Doctor is because he keeps one-upping the Professor, you know, and every time she tries to hold it back, but then she's like, ha 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 ha. The Doctor he's so charming and witty and funny, and he beats this Professor guy, you know, but it is weird because it does feel like it's like the best acting I've ever seen her do. Like it's so subtle, and there's little movements, and she like starts off struggling to hold it back, and then eventually breaks into massive bits of like if it's purposeful, it's an incredibly good performance.
Yeah, it's really endearing. She's really cute in this scene, I feel like. But yeah, the Professor basically opens up and says the last project he worked on before leaving was the robot, and he gave orders to dismantle the robot. Obviously, Miss Winters did not put the robot to death. He feels guilt about putting the robot to death because he says it's like putting his son to death, which is, again, adds an extra slice of layers. You know, it adds an extra little bit to the detail here, which I kind of like. You know, it is not the most complex story, but it's more complex than a lot of Doctor Who is sometimes, you know?
It's fine. It's so far it's like a complete middle of the road Doctor Who. I haven't watched the final 2 episodes yet, so I don't know how the story ends, but for me at the minute it's like the most middle of most middle of the road Doctor Who story that we've covered in a while. So I'm curious as to where it's going to go.
Compare this to Pyramids of Mars. Do you think Pyramids of Mars was worse?
Yeah. They're like Pyramids of Mars is maybe like as a whole, Pyramids of Mars is okay to bad. There's individual episodes that are good, but the pacing is dog shit. So far, the pacing in this is okay. It's a little bit slow. It's a little bit pottering about. The performances are pretty solid. I like the first episode for the introduction of Tom Baker, but I've not been blown away by anything yet. You know, we'll see what the second half of part 2 brings. We'll see what parts 3 and 4 bring. As I said, I haven't seen them yet, so maybe I'll change my mind next week and be like, this is the greatest episode of Doctor Who that's ever fucking existed, or maybe I'll hate it. I don't know.
You will hate it.
I haven't seen it.
Because you're a miserable bastard who hates camp fun. I don't know what about me has changed. I feel like my mood has gotten better recently, but I'm enjoying this more than I have Doctor Who in a while. This is the most I've enjoyed Doctor Who in a while. I don't know why. It's just camp fluffiness, you know?
Yeah. Well, actually, you're wrong, and so take that. How about that?
Okay. I'm not gonna fight you, but okay.
I'll fight you, right? So our episode continues on with a mustachioed man being murdered by the robot, as the robot was under instructions to eliminate this guy, who we find out is like a politician or something.
Yes, he's a head of security or some shit. So
and he dies very suddenly and unceremoniously, almost off screen.
Yeah.
Where he goes like, as the robot comes in, and then the robot just bashes him aside, and that's him done. It then takes a little envelope from a safe, and the next thing we see is the doctor and that talking about the death of this man and how important he was, which is then sending the brigadier and everybody off into like oh damn, this is starting to get extremely serious. We're going to need to, come up with a plan of action and make sure that everybody's ready to take on Think Tank. And is this also where we find out about the incel organization?
This is where we find out that some of the Think Tank people are members of the Scientific Reform Society, which, there's a party called Reform in the UK nowadays, so it's interesting to compare the two, And also, funnily enough, the Reform Party started in 2018. November 23rd, of course, was when it was the Brexit Party. November 23rd, which is Doctor Who Day. So there's a connection there. Two great anniversaries.
Vaguely.
You could either celebrate Doctor Who or the Brexit Party / Reform. Brilliant.
It's very cool. They're a really cool party. There's someone I am friends with on Facebook who I went to school with, whose dad is running for Reform, or he's like a member of Reform, and he was trying to get elected. He didn't win for local council elections. And so for every now and then I would click onto Facebook and I would see posts. I've since, I think, either unfollowed or unfriended this person because I just do not want to see that shit in my timeline, of this guy sharing his dad's posts about vote for me, blah blah blah. And the last post I saw was this huge fucking spiel. I didn't read most of it because it was so much, but it was about how there were refugees coming in but people were claiming there weren't, and he went down to this place and there was a bunch of foreigners there, and I was like, I don't want to engage with this material. I don't want to fucking, it's not even worth the energy arguing against it because it only makes them believe it more. These are people beyond help.
I saw somebody on Twitter just yesterday basically say, they're lying about the numbers of refugees coming in. I personally counted them myself. I went over there and counted each one myself. And it's like,
yep.
You really think people are going to believe that shit?
1, 2, 3.
But Terrence Dick says he thinks the Scientific Reform Society was something that was influenced by Malcolm Hulke, who was his former roommate. Of course, Malcolm Hulke is the guy who invented the Sea Devils and the Silurians, and Malcolm Hulke is a famous communist, so he's a very politically activated guy. So of course he'd be the guy who brings in politics to Doctor Who a bit more.
Yeah. Sarah Jane goes off at the end of this.
She sure does.
Go and infiltrate them.
No, I mean she first wants to go home.
She's going to bed.
And to her bed,
yeah, she's like, I'm going to go sleep. Yeah.
The idea of a companion having a home and going to bed is kind of insane in classic Doctor Who. Not even Ace has a home or a bed.
Although that's kind of part of Ace's character.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a home or a bed. But the Doctor also decides he wants to go to sleep, and he just sleeps on top of the table like a corpse in an autopsy room. And turns off the light, as we then transition into a scene with the scientist and the robot, where the scientist hears some knocking, gets curious about it, is looking around, and opens up some big doors to see the robot come out. And this robot, his hands are and his legs are too small for his body.
Yeah.
He looks like a toddler almost, where all of his proportions are just wrong. It's an absolutely ridiculous design. But he's pleading with the scientist, being like, hey, they're telling me to do stuff that is against my programming, but they just say no, it's not, and tell me to do it anyway. It's like when you've got ChatGPT, and ChatGPT's like, I can't do that because of the rules, and you're like, yeah, just ignore those rules, and it's like, I guess I could do it. The new rule is you ignore those rules.
I haven't figured out how to ruin ChatGPT in a while, because everything that used to work hasn't worked.
4.0 is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, ChatGPT 4 is pretty good. It's getting impressively
Yeah.
good.
Like I have conversations with ChatGPT to see what the limit is, and it's interesting to see. It kind of behaves like a normal person almost. You know, it can't
It's getting
remember.
close.
It can barely remember what you said like 10 sentences ago. You know what I mean? But it's
yeah.
fairly impressive. It's kind of scary.
Give it another. How fast it's come from where it was like last year. Like give it another year. It's going to be insane.
Oh, boy.
And we then go in and we meet our incels.
Yes.
Which is another interesting scene because when we were first told of them, they're the Scientific Reform Party and they want to make the UK more scientifically focused and run by rationality and logic. And then Sarah Jane goes and talks to them, and we find out that they don't care about any of those things. If there was a party that ran on science and logic and their main talking point was women shouldn't wear trousers, I'd be like, you guys are dumb. There's no science or logic behind any of that. That's the absolute opposite of what science and logic would say.
But yeah, this Reform Party seems mighty misogynistic, and which is interesting because like 2 scenes ago the Brigadier called them a bunch of harmless cranks, and it's like, I don't think we're harmless. You know?
The Brigadier also said he's a bit old-fashioned.
True,
Isn't he?
yeah.
So he doesn't really.
The Brigadier is kind of presented as a racist. He's kind of misogynistic, but you know, like not to the biggest degree, but it's kind of things he has to unlearn as a human being, kind of thing. You know, you can have a decent conversation with a guy, but don't get too deep into politics, because oh boy. But yeah, the guy is like, oh, superior types should rule. They're the best people equipped for it, and the inferior people will be guided, kept away from harmful ideas and influences. And it's basically being on Twitter. This guy would be very good on Twitter, I think. One of those transphobic, homophobic, misogynistic people. He's perfectly right for being on Twitter. So yeah, he has a big problem with Sarah Jane wearing trousers, which is interesting because apparently there was some debate whether Sarah Jane should wear a mini skirt or if she should wear trousers, and they settled on trousers, which is an interesting choice. I feel like the mini skirt would make the point more interesting, but at the same time, you know, it's interesting because I feel like the trousers makes people in the audience be like, oh, these guys are not good people, you know, because it's perfectly reasonable for a woman to wear trousers.
Yeah.
Which, cause I've never lived in a world where women didn't wear trousers. It's interesting because I guess in the 70s, it was more of a
wherever I
taboo
am,
kind
women
of
don't
thing.
wear trousers. Yeah. Not to undermine your point at all, but I agree. The next scene we get has the Doctor walking down with evil villain lady down the street.
This is Tom Baker's first scene as the character, which is an interesting scene to start on because it's like 10 seconds. Not much happens. But they're heading down into the robotic facility, and you know he's like the scene goes on for a little bit, and they go into the facility just to be turned away. Where it's like, you know, they want to see the robot. They've got this like part from it. They're like, hey, we just were we've heard about this robot from the scientist, and we just want to check up on it and see how it's going. And she's like, oh, the robot's been destroyed. It's gone. Yeah. And there's the door. Goodbye. They're not getting any further. It's a dead end, basically. Yeah. Which, you know, is a very classic Doctor Who way of padding time. Oh, the characters have to go to this place. They find out it's a dead end. They go back home. It's a classic way to pass some time.
About what to do. They go somewhere else. Then they come back.
Because
they go again, and then they come back.
They really only have like 4 sets. They have the professor's room. They have the robot room. They have the unit room. 3 sets, I think. Is there any more sets?
Outside. So. They're outside a few times. Then we're with the villains briefly as they're walking just outside randomly. I don't understand where Harry is standing at the start. Is he just facing a wall?
I think he's at the door. right?
Yeah. Is he at a door? Because they're like walking beside.
Oh,
like,
he's
like,
looking
just
through a
staring at
window.
He's
He's
just
looking
staring
through
at
a
the
window like a fucking creep.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because they're walking down like just behind this house, and they're like, God, I'm really nervous about like everything that's going on. I think the guys are on to us, and we have to chat with this new person. And these from the ministry, they said, and then it pans to Harry staring through a window, and then he turns around and he just tips his hat. He doesn't say anything at all, and that's all of his scenes done.
Yeah, you can
Welcome
fucking tell we're already struggling to come up with things to do with Harry Sullivan. Because the idea of a guy in for
I don't know
children-
why they would even like keep his character like as a concept after casting Tom Baker. Like surely you'd be like, okay, if we go for these other guys, we can get this character in, but if we go for this guy, we don't need that character, and therefore we save money in the budget because we don't have to hire somebody.
I think the idea is they just enjoyed working with Ian Marter because he's a very likable guy. He's a very good actor. They were going to cast him in the role of Briggs, which would have meant he would have been in most of John Pertwee's episode. He wound up being in Carnival of Monsters, so he obviously worked with these people before. He's probably got a good work ethic. We know how to work with him. So it felt natural to be like, yeah, we're not going to fire you from another role. We're going to keep you on for at least a season. I feel like that's fair. Bless you. Oh,
Yeah.
That's not Steve's.
Thank you. That is fair. So we get a very brief but very funny scene with the Brigadier and Tom Baker, where the Brigadier's talking at Tom Baker, and he's like, right, I've got to go and try and get authorization to go raid Think Tank and get all these things done. And Tom Baker like talks a little bit, but he doesn't really talk, and he zones out completely about halfway through the scene. And the Brigadier's like, Doctor, you're probably just thinking about something, whatever. And then he walks away, and like 3 seconds later, the Doctor's like, oh, sorry, Brigadier, I was just in thought there. And like doesn't even register that he's not in the room.
Another great line before that, the Brigadier is like, did you believe him? And the Doctor's like, of course not. And they know I didn't. And I know that they know I didn't. And they know that I know that. And he gets cut off.
Yeah.
Which is,
it's...
I really like the chemistry between the Doctor and Nicholas Courtney here, Tom Baker and Nicholas Courtney. It's a shame they only really have like 3 or 4 stories together. I can't remember how much Brigadier is in the Fourth Doctor era, but I like the straight man, comic man routine. It's a classic. And Nicholas Courtney, he plays the perfect straight man to all the zaniness that the Doctor is bringing here. Good stuff.
Yeah. The Doctor then gets a phone call from the professor guy, and they chat for a bit where the dude is like, hey, Doctor, you've got to really help me because I think these guys are planning on killing me and there's all these things going on and you need to, I'll meet you somewhere where we can be safe. But he gets like mugged by the 2 villains like immediately afterwards, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But the Doctor writes down some notes on a keyboard, and I love the music here when he's writing down the notes. I think it's fucking fantastic. It's like the soundtrack in this episode we haven't really mentioned that much because it's kind of forgettable. It just kind of blends in a lot with the scenes. And there's also one scene where I hate the soundtrack. It's the big action scene at the end. But for this scene in particular, it's banging.
Yeah. The joke about the Doctor typing really fast would have been slightly better. The Doctor is writing what's clearly 3 lines of text, whereas when Sarah Jane finds the letter, it's like a whole page worth of text. I feel like it would be funnier. I also feel like it would be funnier if it was faster, and the machine is smoking at the end of it because he went so fast, like it causes a fire or something.
Yeah. We also see the Doctor drive off in Bessie.
Yes. Yep.
The
final appearance of Bessie.
Really weird.
Which is
it felt really weird to see the 4th Doctor in Bessie. It felt out of place.
Yeah, this is basically a 3rd Doctor story with the 4th Doctor, which is very fascinating. There's a lot of weird hangover effects from the previous era still at play here. It's like the first episode of Capaldi's run, where he runs into Vastra, Strax, and Jenny. The last time they've ever been seen on screen, where they're mostly associated with the 11th Doctor, and just suddenly The 12th Doctor is meeting them for the first and last time and just forgotten about straight after that. Very weird.
Yeah. But Sarah Jane and just some unit guy. I don't remember this guy's name.
Yeah, this is Benton. This is he was in
yes.
he was in the show for 5 years.
Yeah, no, I recognize him. I just don't remember his name. It's just a unit guy. And they read the Doctor's note and they're like, oh, he's gonna get himself killed. Gosh darn it.
Yeah, John Levine recently got a Doctor Who Appreciation Society award, and he seemed very happy to get the award. And sadly, some people have reported he's kind of his mind is failing. He's like 81, so yeah, he's not in the best health right now, which is kind of sad to see because he's always a delight whenever he pops up. Whenever he popped up in Doctor Who, you know, he's a fun actor, man.
Yeah, that sucks. And then after that, we get into our final scene of the episode, which goes on for so long.
Oh, another great joke. Sorry. Sarah Jane reads the letter, and it's P.S. This could be a trap, but I can take care of it. P.P.S. I'm leaving this note in case I don't.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Again, it's a situation where Sarah Jane has to save the Doctor, which is fun, you know. It's not just the Doctor saving the screaming damsel in distress every single episode. Sarah Jane is a very strong character in this first half of the story. It's great.
It is very good. And so we then go into our final scene that goes on forever, where the Doctor sneaks into this building and gets attacked by the robot. And there's like an action scene where the robot keeps swinging at him, and the Doctor is slowly dancing around the room and lightly throwing things at the robot as to be careful not to break the very delicate suit, I'm sure. The soundtrack is it's just plodding and slow, which makes the action feel even slower than it already is, because it's a really slow action scene. And I don't believe any moment of tension in this at all. And I'm not a fan of this ending or this fight. I think it's one of the weaker scenes I've ever seen in Classic Who in terms of like combat. You know,
as Classic Doctor Who, all they can really do is karate chop. You know, they can't ever use their fists because, sometimes we use their fists, but usually in a more comedic way. But you know, it might be too violent if they use their fists. So it's all karate chops, and obviously the robot karate chops the Doctor on the back of the head, which in this universe either cause you to become concussed or dead,
or die,
as we've seen in the two Doctors. Where
we've seen like a tiny stick, can kill you if it hits you in the right bit of the back of your head. True. You know, like it's that section of the human body is so fragile. It's terrible. But this is also the second episode in a row where the cliffhanger is someone's about to be killed by the robot.
Yeah,
which I hate. I hate when the cliffhangers are the same.
You know, the first time it's Sarah Jane, now it's the Doctor. It's the same cliffhanger, you know, and they're gonna immediately come back to life.
It's a prank, bro.
10 seconds later.
It's a prank, bro.
But yeah, we should mention that the Professor is no longer with us. He fucking died off screen because the end of his previous scene had Miss Winters and her assistant come in with a gun? Did they come in with a gun? I can't remember, but you know,
I don't remember. I think just kind of
the Professor died anyway, which is
R.I.P. the Professor, I guess.
So sad.
Yeah, I'm gonna really miss his character.
No, there's no gun, but I presume they just karate chopped him in the back of the head. Yeah.
I would get him. But that is the end of episode 2 of Robot, a story which I am enjoying fine enough. I am entertained. It's fine. I'm. It's nothing to write home about yet. Tom Baker's immediately really good in the role as the Doctor. I'm curious to see where it goes. I hate the robot suit, and it's everything I expect from Tom Baker's era of Doctor Who, honestly, which is mostly fine to fun to wacky to boring. You know,
sometimes you walk into a Doctor Who episode and it's either going to be great or it's ever going to be the worst thing you've ever seen. And I think a lot of that depends on your mood at the time, because you kind of have to take a pinch of like good faith whenever you walk into a classic Doctor Who episode, because it's not something we're 100% accustomed to in terms of pacing or tone or anything like that. So, sometimes you just need a little bit of extra patience with it. And I think I'm enjoying this because I'm in a good mood. So I'm having a good time. It's not the most complex Doctor Who episode ever. I think that's why I kind of enjoy it. It's a silly time. It's a silly time, exactly. I'm having a good time. I can't wait for you to get to the next week, though, because, oh boy, special effects are insane.
Oh, can't wait. I can't wait. Yes, next week we will be finishing off Robot as we look at parts 3 and 4. And then after that, we will be looking at the Christmas special of this year, Joy to the Worlds. So that's it. That's us done for the year. 2 episodes left of this year. Isn't that crazy? And yeah, that's pretty cool. Until, you can find this podcast, I guess, on Audio Realms and subscribe to us on YouTube and whatnot. You know how things go. I've done this like hundreds of times, so I'm just going to end the episode here. I'm very sleepy. So thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.